do you feel about AI? Is ChatGPT your biggest collaborator when it comes to writing essays? Or are you alarmed by the possibility that AI could replace humans in the next 20 years? With its explosive development in the last decade, AI is now being used in ways never foreseen before, one being a consultant for advice in professional fields. Public opinion towards this newfound pervasive presence is very much split. Some accept everything it suggests as truth without skepticism, while others dismiss all AI-generated content as misinformation. As AI takes over the world by storm, we also gradually form our attitudes and potentially prejudices against it. Prejudice is unfavorable attitude towards a social group. In our case, although AI is not a traditional social group, like people of a certain ethnicity or gender, people still talk about AI as if it were a social category and can hold biased attitudes towards it. It's basically a mentality of us versus them, humanity versus AI. Prejudice consists of three components: cognitive, the beliefs about a group; affective, feelings about a group; and finally, behavioral, your actions towards that group. Among these three, there is an attitude-behavior relationship where our prejudiced beliefs influence us to carry out acts of discrimination. So, do people have any prejudice against AI? And if so, how is that shown through their actions? We used two health information articles to find the answer to those questions. One about preventing type 2 diabetes and one about preventing lung cancer, both written by humans. Participants were told that they were being tested on the ability to identify differences between human-written and AI-assisted contents, then randomly assigned to two groups. For Group A, the diabetes article was labeled AI-assisted, and the lung cancer article was labeled human-written. For Group B, we simply swapped the labels between the two articles. Attitudes towards the two texts were measured by asking them to rate the content quality, author, and their overall acceptance on a 1 to 7 point scale. Here, the labeling of an article as AI can be seen as a potential persuasive cue. The label may shift their attitudes and then their rating behavior. This is where the elaboration likelihood model of persuasion, ELM, comes into play. The idea is that persuasion follows two routes, depending on how much mental effort people spend on analyzing a persuasive message and deciding whether it is convincing or not. Here, participants use a peripheral route, as they simply take the label as truth without much thought put into it, as opposed to a central route, where they carefully consider and evaluate the arguments presented. In a second questionnaire, we measured their attitudes towards generative AI to examine the relationship between these two attitudes. Hypothetically, as we assume that the two articles were similar in quality, if people have a prejudice against AI, the AI-assisted label should work as a negative peripheral cue in line with the ELM. This negative attitude would then be showcased through discriminatory behavior in the form of lower ratings. So we predicted a simple pattern. The same article would always be rated lower when labeled as AI than when labeled as human. People would perceive the paper to be of lower quality when they think it is written using AI, and that would be true for both papers. But our data told a different story. For overall ratings, we observed a clear crossover interaction. The effects were completely reversed for the two articles. For the diabetes article, being labeled as AI actually increased its ratings compared with the human label. On the other hand, for the lung cancer article, the same AI label strongly reduced overall ratings. Specific ratings on content quality and the author show the same trend. The AI label made the diabetes article slightly more favorable, whereas the human label was more favorable for the lung cancer article.
So why did this happen? Why did people prefer the AI label for diabetes advice, but not for lung cancer? Well, our first clue came when we looked more closely at the articles themselves. We originally assumed both articles were similar in quality, but it turns out, even under the human label, the diabetes and lung cancer articles were rated a bit differently. So the content itself wasn't perfectly balanced, but that alone doesn't explain the complete reversal we saw. The real answer lies in what people believe about AI. We also gave participants a separate questionnaire to measure their general attitudes toward AI. And guess what? They didn't just hate AI. In fact, they were quite positive about it. On average, they agreed that skills in using AI are very important today. It's necessary to learn how to use AI tools, and asking AI everyday questions is helpful. But when it came to more serious statements, they were a lot less sure. For example, they were neutral about whether AI gives better advice than professionals, and they weren't fully confident that AI will always be used safely. So people see AI as useful but maybe not fully trustworthy in high-stakes situations. And this matches perfectly with what we saw in the experiment. Let's think about the two health topics. Diabetes prevention is about daily lifestyle, like healthy eating and regular exercise. It's familiar, manageable, and it's not life or death. Lung cancer prevention, on the other hand, feels more serious. The article talked about quitting smoking, radon exposure, and irreversible risks. It's high stakes. It's scary. So in the diabetes case, an AI-assisted label might actually help because people think of AI as good at giving standard, efficient advice for everyday things. But for lung cancer, that same AI label makes people nervous. They want a human expert when the topic is serious. This is where a social psychology theory called protection motivation theory, or PMT, gives us a powerful lens to understand what's going on. PMT explains how people evaluate threats and decide how to cope with them. It's like a mental cost-benefit analysis when we feel at risk. This process has two main parts. First, threat appraisal. People assess the danger itself. Threat severity. How bad is the threat? Like, is lung cancer a severe disease? Yes. And threat susceptibility. How vulnerable am I? Second, coping appraisal. People assess whether they can deal with the threat. Response efficacy. Will the recommended action work? Like, will this advice actually prevent cancer? Self-efficacy. Can I actually do what is recommended? And response costs. What are the downsides of taking this action? Now let's apply this to our experiment. For lung cancer, the threat appraisal is naturally high. It's a severe and frightening disease. When people feel this level of threat, they become more critical about the source of the advice. They ask, is this recommendation truly reliable? In this high-stakes context, an AI label lowered the perceived response efficacy. People just didn't feel that AI was as effective as a human expert for a matter this serious. But for diabetes prevention, the threat might feel more manageable through lifestyle changes. The threat appraisal is lower. Here, the AI-assisted label might have actually boosted the perceived response efficacy. So it's not just a simple prejudice against AI, it's more like a smart context-dependent trust. People treat AI as a social category with both positive and negative stereotypes. Our rating results can be seen as a subtle context-dependent form of discrimination. People discriminate more against AI in high-stakes topics than in everyday ones. They see AI as efficient and smart, but maybe not wise or empathetic enough for life and death decisions. That's why the same AI-assisted label had opposite effects depending on the health topic. So context is king. And maybe next time you see AI assisted on an article, ask yourself, is this a high-stakes topic? Would I feel better if a human expert wrote it? Being aware of our own biases helps us using AI more wisely and maybe even design it better.